Poems to a Listener, readings and conversation with contemporary poets.
A child rolls a ball to where death stands and waits for him to roll it back. But death does not touch it. Death covers his face with his hands and turns away. The child runs after, wanting to play.
Welcome to Poems to a Listener. I'm Henry Lyman, and in this half-hour program, we'll be visiting with poet Linda Gregg and listening to poems drawn mostly from her book, The Sacraments of Desire, published by Grey Wolf Press. The child in the poem we just heard rolls her ball towards death without the slightest distrust or fear. The only fear is felt by death himself, and perhaps by us as we look on.
I'm writing it so the reader knows that there's this almost heartbreaking sweetness of the child, the open-eyed child, wanting to play, wanting to live. Every parent must know when they see a child, it's come into the world of death.
And having no fear of it.
The child doesn't know this, but the reader, the hearer, knows.
How terrible this little game is.
How heart-wrenching. It's terrible, yes. It's terrible, but it's redeemable. But, it's terrible. When death comes, we take off our clothes and gather everything we left behind. What is dark, broken, touched with shame. When death demands we give an accounting, naked we present our lives in bundles. See how much these weigh, we tell him, refusing to deny what we have lived. Everything that is touched by light loves the light. We, the stubborn as grass, we who reel at the taste of sap and want our spirits cleansed, will not betray the weeds, snake, or crippled mare. Never leave behind what the light shone on.
Which is the ordinary, the moment-by-moment experience of all these people?
I think one of the things this poem says in the face of death is that existence matters. Not the times when we were good versus the times when we were bad. Not the mistake. Not even the suffering. But existence.
So not the value or the quality, but the fact itself.
There is a value, but the value is in our being. We look back on our lives, and what I see is this radiance everywhere, in the things and times where something essential was happening, when we weren't playing it safe or merely safe. It's fine to be safe. I'm not telling everybody to jump off bridges on coal boats and go downriver to San Francisco and then stow away on a ship that takes you to Hawaii like my father did. Or jump on a train and end up on a Hopi Indian reservation or in Florida writing a postcard back to my mother who was 20 saying that she looked like the moon. Eating with bums. But things that are essential.
What the poem praises, then, is being, existence, in contrast to, let us say, the bundles of our lives as we present them. Look at how much these weigh. See the quality of this, how valuable this is.
We don't just bring,
valuable bundles.
Our PhD, our propriety, we don't That's not what you talk to God about. You bring the things that mattered. The rain comes down on the desert, and the next day, my father knew, the earth is covered with tiny flowers. He abandoned us every year, 4 daughters and a wife. Drove with gallons of water tied along both sides of the Jeep to lie on his stomach at sunrise on sand and stone, surrounded by rock and sand. To know distance and know the close-up, because he believed it was near to God, the place nobody wanted, the parts of the world left alone, the flatness where things are broken down to the clearest form. He would say it was the simple he wanted. Sun coming up and shining first on the bottom of your feet as you are looking at flowers appearing out of sand. A lizard lying on a hot stone, knowing the lightning wants to strike something, knowing lightning has no mouth, no teeth, not even a stomach. But when it strikes, the lizard will race wriggling up to God's shining face, which is so bright that no one can see anything but the glare. The sun is always there or dark, far off or close up. My father lived out where God could kill him. That is the way of real desire, the way of passionate grace, slow or quick, the small and the big. Absolute as 2 hands rubbing together with sand on them, the grit between. It is what makes the heart seem tender. Only this. But my father died in the grand house he built with his own hands on the snow line next to an Indian midden. Not on top, he said, because he wanted the quail families to continue their walks together like that always. My sister thought he was playing when he fell down next to the half-finished chess game by the fire that night, making a huge animal sound. It was just like a bear roaring, she said.
There's the desire on the part of your father here. It seems to see the face of God, in a sense.
Yes, but he didn't go out saying that's what he wanted.
No, but perhaps unconsciously.
I saw something like that in him. I almost want to say he smelled that way, when he would return from being up in the mountains or on the desert, like somebody who'd gone a long way away. And there was no questioning him. There was no saying, why don't you wait, or it's inconvenient for the family, or something like that.
He'd just go.
Absolutely.
Now, he raised you that way to some extent, didn't he?
Yes, and I liked it, because it was filled with size and it was filled with delicacy. He'd say, go to the mountain and see the shooting stars are up. Go to the other side of the mountain and see that. Or he'd wake us at 3 a.m. and take us out and show us this constellation. He expected a lot of us. He expected us to be girls and boys. I'm saying us, meaning my twin sister and me.
Didn't he put you out in the wilderness once?
Yes, he did. I'm tempted to say it was the strongest, most shaping thing that ever happened to me. You will have to stand in the clearing and see your arms glow near ferns and roots. Hear things moving in the branches heavy with black green. You will be silvery, knowing death could capture you in that condition of yielding. You will be alarmed by everything real, even moisture. She will not tell you there is nothing to fear. You will come to see her, and she will blaze upon you, stun you with the radiance of a feral world. But she cannot take you up into herself whenever you desire, as the world can. She is the other nature, and sexual in a way that makes the intervening flesh thin as paper. You will feel your bones getting lighter. You will feel more and more at risk. You will think her shining drains you of meaning, but it is a journey you must take. And when the sun returns, when you walk from the forest to your world, you will have known the land where your spirit lives. Will have diagrams drawn by creases on your body and maps on your palms that were also there. Now you will recognize them as geography. You will know an unkempt singing you will never hear without her. You know, I think what I'm talking about there is just size.
But you also seem to be talking about what for most of us is perhaps another world, the feral world, the savage world, the wilderness, and everything that implies.
I think because of my upbringing, I see what is true as being primal, and I get to this whenever my life is true.
Is it through an unkempt singing that you...
Yes, I think of Christ. I mean, think these people were trying to follow Christ, and Christ did wild things, like tell people to betray their mother and father and walk with him. It exhibited incredibly strange behavior, like not answering questions and drawing in the dirt instead. Or how fans were going to come and talk to him, and instead he leaves immediately and goes to a mountain. I mean, there's something else going on here.
Well, I think one has that impression when one reads your poems, that there is often something else going on. Something that frightens us.
I climb the mountain. Up steps the moon has already taken. Of absence. Of things broken. To see if the moon is a mouth. To see if I am what it wants. It's funny, such a short, small poem. I think this poem is just almost all mystery.
Huh.
What does it mean? Of absence, of things broken. What's broken?
A life, a lifetime left behind.
To see if the moon is a mouth. I'm going. Yeah. The sense of willingness.
There's the desire to be totally absorbed by the world, by the universe. To see if the moon is a mouth.
It's not, it's funny. There's a very slim a line, thin line between someone who would be careless or self-destructive and someone who is willing to risk everything for the truth, to know, to really know. I hope that this poem is saying that. There's a willingness, if the moon is a mouth, if I am what it wants, then whatever will happen, something will happen. But I am willing to know what the moon is, what love is, what death is, what a truth. When the priest in charge, wearing his great robes, yells at her, she blinks. When he starts across the cell toward her, demanding in his powerful voice to know where she was born, and the men with pikes file out through the heavy door, leaving her with only the priests, she says, I know neither the day nor the hour, and looks down, sees on the stone floor the shadow of the window making a cross, and is happy. "You say you are the daughter of God," he says, accusing her. And she replies softly, "Yes, by a great victory." A fly lands on her forehead. When it is on her eyelid, she brushes it away. "I am alone with him," she adds. When they show her how the wheel of knives works, she falls down unconscious. Later she says, "It seems to me that I am in great danger of death." They take her to another room and offer her the sacrament. When they withhold it, she covers her face with her hands. They lead her out into a great courtyard. A crowd, the ground dirt, the wood piled up, the ladder in place. "His ways are not our ways," she says. Then says nothing. Then says, "Where shall I be tonight?" A baby is sucking at his heavy mother. Joan lifts the fallen rope to help them tie her. Then smoke and birds, a flock of birds and fire.
Joan of Arc. Do you identify with her?
There's a simplicity to her responses, which to me shows a lot of being and intelligence. She says very little.
Yeah. Just very simple statements.
Mm-hmm. When people suffer, it's so bad. It's all we can notice. But a lot of times, there's something under it. It's very powerful. Something very important and powerful is getting made. The poem shows a lot of pain. But I hope it also shows what's being created, what her faith produces, what the fire actually means. I identify with that. "You told people I would know easily what the murdered lady had in her sack which could prove she was happy more or less." As if they were a game. The old women who carry all they own in bags, maybe proudly, without homes, we think, except the streets. But if I could guess, nothing in sets, for example, I would not. They are like those men who lay their few things on the ground in a park at the end of Hester. For sale, perhaps, but who can tell? Like her way of getting money, never asking, sideways and disconcerting, with no thanks, only judgment. "You are a nice girl," one said as she moved away and then stopped in front of a bum sitting on the bench who yelled that he would kill her if she did not get away from him. She walked at an angle not exactly away, but until she was the same distance from each of us, stood still, looking down, standing in our attention as if it were a palpable thing, like the city itself or the cold winter, holding her hands. And if there was disgrace, it was God's. The failure was ours as she remained quite near the concrete wall, with cars coming and the sound of the subway filling and fading in the most important place we have yet devised.
The poem leaves me with this haunting image, the street, the woman standing there in the most important place we have yet devised. It's as if the poem itself is that place.
You know, she was living in New York City. It's amazing to spend time in the South Bronx or Harlem, the Lower East Side. Incredible poverty, incredible hardship. You can't be in New York for an hour. You can't take one subway ride in New York without seeing something totally desperate.
Or seeing her.
Yes.
Now, is New York the place, the most important place we have yet devised? Or is it the poem that is this place?
Well,
which you have
I
devised?
take your question as a kind of compliment rather than an answer. It
Can-
doesn't help that woman. However, if poetry was able to make people care, if poetry about her made people open their eyes, simply, if it made them care, I think that would be wonderful. It would make a difference then. I think of him overturning the tables of the money changers and the stalls of the sellers of doves. I think of the outside of my house where most days there are morning glories and sun on the gentians. I go to the river by the dirt road between cornfields, under open skies, to the shade and ferns and freshness by the water. The current is powerful against me as I swim upstream. I reach a tree that has fallen into the river and hold on, breathing and excited by the bright world. When I swim back to the shallows, there are 5 Puerto Rican men fishing, 2 adults and 3 boys. Hola, I say. One of the boys says he is learning English. El río es frío, I say. The older man says, está, correcting me. When I get out and start for my towel, no one looks at me. As I leave, the boy says quietly to his father, Eso linda. I hold on to that grace as I ride my bicycle back through the corn, the sun on me. There was grace in those men. There was grace in the simple event of going out on the bicycle to the river and swimming. This poem is noticing something that is quite ordinary.
It's very ordinary.
You
but
know, 5 Puerto Ricans fishing. There's a few little tense things there, like the woman is alone, and there's suddenly 5 men, you know. There's a little tension there about what's going to happen, but there's a great courtesy between them, kindness and courtesy. And that small courtesy and kindness fills up, kind of radiates my heart.
The exchange, too, is so simple.
Mm-hmm.
You say the river is cold.
Mm-hmm.
And
I try to say it in Spanish.
yes, well, it's almost correct, but the father corrects the gender.
Mm-hmm.
And then the boy, as you leave, says to his father, Eso linda, meaning it's beautiful.
Mm-hmm. Well, it could
It's
mean
pretty.
could mean
This is pretty.
this is a nice thing this
Yeah.
day, or it could be this is nice being here. Life is nice. The February road to the river is mud and dirty snow, tire tracks and corn cobs uncovered by the mildness. I think I am living alone and that I am not afraid. Love is those birds working hard at flying over the mountain, going somewhere else. Fidelity is always about what we have already lived. I am happy, kicking snow. The trees are the ones to honor. The trees and the broken corn, and the clear sky that looks like rain is falling through it. Not a pretty spring, but the real thing. The old weeds and the old vegetables. Winter's graceful severity melting away. I don't think the dead will speak. I think they are happy just to be here. If they did, I imagine them saying, birds flying, twigs, water reflecting. There is only this, dead weeds waiting, uncovered to the quiet, soft day.
The dead, if they are there, speak in the poem. And what they say is very ordinary, just the language of simple, unadorned statement. Birds flying, twigs, water reflecting, as if nothing more needed to be said.
The dead, I believe, are in love with what's here. They would just name the things, I believe.
Without sentimentality.
But not without heart. And that's the whole point. The point is how the spirit and the heart take something that is plain, and because of love, because of the spirit, because of a human life, transform that thing without changing it. And yet it is translated into beauty by the heart. It is lit. It is loved by being named. All of it moving, turning every which way, immersing itself in air, dangling down. Everything breathing and shelving, leaping up at sudden notice, alive and tingling and going with what takes it. All of it threaded each to each, leaf to branch, branch to trunk, to wet root spreading down into the earth like hands gripping hard to keep what lives safe from danger. I see the blur of trees joined in the twilight, see the dark they make as I go out of their covering to the high place and what can be seen from there, wanting to stay with them, wanting to turn back to that haven once green, to stay with the sensuous leaves, to know them moving, to hear the swish and murmur, the murmuring of division and desiring.
Poet Linda Gregg, reading from The Sacraments of Desire, published by Grey Wolf Press. I'm Henry Lyman. Thanks for being with us.
Poems to a Listener was produced by Henry Lyman in cooperation with WFCR, Amherst, Massachusetts. This program was supported by the Witter Binner Foundation for Poetry and the National Endowment for the Arts.